The World Economic Forum's 2025 Future of Jobs report forecasts that a quarter of currently available jobs will experience major disruption by the year 2030. The number of jobs that will be created are expected to be far from enough to absorb the numbers of job losses due to the evolution of various industries. Chief Economist at Pan-African Investment and Research Services, Dr. Iraj Abedian, joins us for more. Dr. Abedian, very good evening to you. Thank you for your time. I mean, insofar as the trends are concerned, according to the latest Future of Jobs report by the World Economic Forum, increasing costs of living ranks as the second most transformative trend overall, and then the top trend is related to economic conditions. What is your assessment? What do you make of the outcomes of this report?
Thank you very much, Import, for inviting me, and greetings to our viewers. First of all, I think it's important to note that it's not just World Economic Forum that has analysis of this nature. Nearly all the research institutions globally have come to more or less the same conclusion and predictions that based on the digitalization and AI and the rapid pace at which it's happening, many jobs are going to disappear. Of course, many other jobs are going to appear that they don't exist or have not existed. And as importantly, there's going to be intragenerational dynamics amongst the older members of the workforce and the younger, as well as those who hope to enter the market. So the entire job market or future of jobs is really in a very tectonic type of restructuring and revolution. That means upfront, what we can absolutely bet on, all the front jobs or front desk jobs or frontline jobs of administrative nature are going to pretty much disappear, the same way that we nowadays don't have typists or typing services. So that is a fundamental change globally. At the same time, broadly, about 60 to 65% of jobs at the middle range are going to also either diminish, or the nature of those type of jobs are going to change. More and more jobs of the future are going to be analytical, are not going to be repetitive administrative. It requires the younger members of the workforce to be incredibly resilient, analytical, and be able to synthesize their skills and not just repeat the same thing that they've learned and do it over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. Half of employers are expecting to transform their businesses by 2030 with the numerous jobs facing disruption. What does it essentially mean for the creation of new jobs and the preparation which comes with it, and what's at stake for the older cohort of employees?
Interestingly enough, the older cohort are going to be able to hang into their jobs a bit longer, and which means that those who want to enter the market, they are now back in the queue, which means there aren't as many job opportunities. So, and we see it globally. We see that a lot younger people are still having to stay with their families. They cannot afford, even when they get a job, they cannot afford to have their own homes.
Yeah.
In Europe, it's become a common thing. Even in South Africa, we see more or less the same type of trends, and everywhere else. So I think this globalization of this pattern is also a new one. Before, there was a distinction between developed countries and developing countries or emerging economies. That distinction also has disappeared, which means the emerging economies, more or less at the same time, they are subject to the same changes and the structural revolutions within the job markets.
Yeah.
What does it mean for our education system, for our training and retraining? We have to go back to the drawing board and literally redesign what I would call it a human resource development paradigm, as opposed to education, going to school, going to universities and learning a few lessons. Those days have changed. So we need to redesign our human resource development quite rapidly, otherwise we're going to stay behind.
Yeah, that's quite an important fact there. Looking at the significance, how significant will the general economic slowdown be with all these expectations around business transformation?
I think the general, in many countries, especially those who have adopted already new technologies, AI and the like, we're going to see actually, oddly enough, a growth in the economy, but a concentration of those who are in the market, and the gap between those who are outside and inside, the so-called inside and outside, the gap is going to widen quite sharply, and the income distribution likewise is going to become more skewed. And for countries such as Brazil, such as South Africa, and a whole lot of other countries where already distribution of income quite mal-distributed, and the gap is too high between the rich and the poor, this is going to be really problematic from a socio-political point of view.
And what about predictions when it comes to the impact of inflation? What impact could inflation have on issues like job creation and the global displacements that we'll see as we look towards 2030?
The global inflation is somewhat different, but it would have adverse social impact. In some industries, AI would make the cost of production cheaper. It will bring down the unit cost. In many areas, especially in services, like research and all sorts of legal and other areas. So the cost per unit will come down, but at the same time, you will have very few people doing the same type of services that hundreds of people used to do. And that means the income earning by those who are in the business, it will rise. Pressure for certain demand for certain goods and services that rich and well-off people use going to go up. So there will be also across products and services inflation, which will vary very differently. In fact, in some areas we might have deflation, whereas in some other products and services we'll have a rising cost. And all of that will stabilize over time, but over the next 10 years we're going to have real dynamics in terms of productivity and return on investment in different services and products. At the same time, we're going to see a gap between those who have and have not, as well as a growing gap between those who have already entered the market and they catch up and retrain and keep up with the trends, as opposed to those who are outside the system and they cannot retrain and regain new skills.
You talk about a very important aspect earlier on, redesigning the human resource development plan. I mean, is there capacity to redesign in that format? How far is South Africa, if you just have to look at a bird's eye view of preparation ahead of 2030?
That's a sad and tragic story. As you know better than me, in South Africa, we're still talking whether our high school and the schools have got hygiene and toilets and stuff like that. And our preoccupation is with such a historic and unfortunate side, as opposed to being futuristic, taking actions and spending our resources on these type of issues that we discuss. So our education system is way out of line with not only the current needs in the economy, but the emerging future needs of the economy, if you like, the future world of employment and jobs. And therefore, I'm extremely worried that we are behind and we will stay behind. And that's a national priority that I hope the Minister of Education and the Cabinet as a whole will give it due recognition, not just talk about it, but do something about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Some sound advice there. Thank you so much for your time. Chief Economist at Pan-African Investment and Research Services, Dr. Iraj Abedian. Now, that's all the news for this hour as we bring you more at the top of 10. Your weather up next.